Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
You just be sitting up there jacked with Pepsi.
I'm there for the pack out. You just got to pack me in.
Committed to the bow early on. Like, I love getting close and putting up.
You cover a range of stuff on here too, right? Like,
we call this the THP World Headquarters.
You know, my grandpa Roy Weatherby.
I came into like that golden little pocket where there was like 4 or 5 different bulls. Just
You're Canadian? We're doing a Canadian podcast.
My name's Douglas Bode.
I'm Robbie Denning.
Roy Candy.
An elk is something special, but to be able to do it with your kid is next level.
Yeah, and he shot a bigger bull than I did. Couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, here for a kid, like, I didn't shoot a bull like that till I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
13. My goodness.
Yeah. How old is he?
He's 13.
13. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's is that your oldest?
No, that's my middle child. I got 3 kids. A 16-year-old Cohen, Mace is 13, and then a 5-month-old Olivia.
Oh, nice. Good little break there before get on to the next one, eh?
Oh yeah.
That's always fun. Yeah, I got 3 myself. They're a little closer together, but man, it's a ton of fun. Wyatt, he's 11 this year, and he loves getting out. So my daughter just turned 10, and she's been out a bit, but not as hardcore as her older brother. And the Hunter, the youngest, he's raring to go already. So he's 7, but he can't wait to turn 10. So why don't we just start off, buddy? Just give yourself a little introduction, let the listeners know kind of who you are and maybe how you got into hunting. Lost the audio again there.
You got me there?
Yeah, for sure.
Name's Derek Corey. I'm a husband to Natasha Corey, father of 3. I'm a technician, turbine technician. I'm a supervisor of a power plant. As far as hunting, that's my everything. That's all my hobbies are all hunting. Hunting's been a part of my life since I can remember. My father hunted, his father hunted. Parents did a really good job of getting us outdoors. And it wasn't until 2013, like, we did a lot of deer hunting when I was younger, growing up, a lot of waterfowl. You know, I shot a cow elk, nothing major, nothing as, like, definitely not what I'm doing now, that's for sure. But 2013, a friend of mine, Brett, and I got really heavily into elk hunting, and it was just your stereotypical bushwhacking, not really knowing what to do, just kind of failing. I was really heavily into long range rifle, precision rifle, target, pushing the limits of distances and stuff like that, but nothing. It was all hunting, all centered around hunting, right?
Yeah.
And then around 2015, started getting more into archery, started shooting, but it wasn't good enough to really think about ethically taking an animal.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2016 is really when, 2015, I shot a big bull moose with my father. And then from there, I pretty much had just said, I gotta commit or I'm not going to get any success.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I am with everything, whether that's fly fishing, archery, rifle, I'm all in, because I feel like if you don't do that, you're not going to have that success that you're wanting, and you're just kind of wasting your time fumbling around out there. So 2016, dedicated all of my effort towards elk. Bugling 15 minutes a day. I did that for a year and a half. I had like this big pile of reeds.
Yeah.
Just trying to make noises, trying to understand noises, why the elk are doing what they're doing, and then just shooting my bow like a maniac. 2017, I bought a new Hoyt, and that's really when I started really shooting archery. But at the end of 2016, I did shoot a 6x6 bull elk with my rifle, but then I was like, there's got to be a better way. There really does, because elk hunting, and this might be controversial to some people, I feel like elk hunting can be, in quotations, easier in archery for the person that practices, they're dedicated, they're skilled. Because once you get into the elk, you have some sort of lever. When you're in rifle, there's no levers.
Yeah.
You got to be out there and you got to find them. And there's a zillion people out there, and you're dealing with the elk, the hunters, limited space. They're getting pushed around. As far as, a pure way, the right way to hunt elk, I think, is with a bow and arrow.
Yeah. I've said it too, and I couldn't agree more, that I think, like, for all the animals, like compared to like mule deer hunting, like elk with a bow, if you put the time in, if you're committed, if you put the work in, can be easier, just because the nature of the elk, like calling, you can get them in a lot closer. And then once you have to put the time in, you know what I mean? You can't just grab a bow, shoot it a bit, and go and say, okay, well, Kevin said it's easier to kill a elk with a bow than a rifle. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, if you were to pick some animals to shoot with I feel during the rut, if you've put your time into your area, you're calling and you're confident in your shooting, it could definitely be easier, because you can call those bulls in so close. Like the bull I shot this year, man, I shot like 10 to 15 feet. Like he was coming in on a string.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, saying that, I've suffered a lot. I've gone through all those growing pains. You know what I mean? I've put my time in to get to where I'm confident that, if you put me in a situation where there's a bull, I'm gonna be able to kill that bull.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, being proficient with calling, making sure that it's funny because, when people ask me about calling, I always tell them, like, well, how would you like it if you're trying to communicate with someone on the other side of a room and they're a stranger, and all you do is you say, hey, and they say, hey, how you doing? And you just say, hey, hey, like it's the same thing over and over. So, having that ability to understand what they're doing, like, I mean, it's just like with your bow. Like a lot of people say, like, well, you can call an elk and elk aren't perfect and you don't need to be the best caller. Well, that's true. But just like with your bow, there's guys out there that they pull their bow out and they shoot once and then they go out and they hunt. Is that the best way to do it? Probably not.
Yeah.
So, the same thing with calling, just making sure that those calls and knowing when to adapt and change. And that's really what I've been doing since then, since I had my first big success on elk, really dove into it. And then every year it's been just an expectation. I'm going to get an elk and I'm going to do whatever it takes, whether that's shooting my bow, lifting weights, physically being prepared, calling. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I'm not failing myself when I'm getting that position where I'm like, oh, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Having that little bit of extra oomph that really is when you, like, even with my kid, we seen elk. There, a couple bulls are coming across the ridge. And I'm like, this is where people fail. Let's go. Yeah. Like, we have to cut them off, head them off. We may not catch them, but if we don't get to the top of that hill, we don't even have a chance. Yeah, and we won't even see where they're going, right? And that's where that little bit extra push, where everybody else, 90% apparently, right? It's only 10% people kill elk.
Yeah, and I feel that number is distorted too, because I feel like a lot of guys, the same guys, are killing elk every year. Like if you look at, guys like yourself and other guys out there, guys we've had in this show, They're getting it done every year. But those are also the guys that are putting in 365 days a year, whether it's working out, calling, practicing their calling, knowing their reads, knowing their bow, knowing their physical limitations, knowing their own expectations, knowing where the animals are, knowing the area that they're hunting. Those are all things that come into play. And like you said, you can't just pick up your bow, shoot it a couple times, and be absolutely confident that you're going to be able to shoot a bull when it's bugling 40 yards in front of you. And the same goes for calling. Like, you can't just pull a reed out of a package, go down and say, oh, I'm going out hunting, I got to pick up a couple reeds, and then pull it out of the package and just start making mouth calls and expect to be efficient with it. Expect to get the job done. That's just not how it works. You have to be committed day in, day out, all year long to be consistently successful at elk hunting.
Yeah, that's totally true. It's not easy making it look easy.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, you got it done on day one. Well, not really.
Yeah.
I'm at the range, I'm shooting, I'm figuring out any weak points in that, making sure my bow is running top notch. I got the confidence I can make any shot that's required. And that's not shooting standing, that's shooting kneeling, that's drawing on my back and sitting up, that's shooting while moving, drawn, that's figuring out what you can and cannot do, having your gear management under control. So I'm not running my bugle tube and my wrist strap is whacking my bugle tube, making a weird noise. Like, you can't have anything like that happening.
Yeah, otherwise, for sure,
man. Just too hard. You hike so far in there, and then you have something like that you just didn't consider happen. That just can't happen. And even like with this last bull that I shot with my bow this year, it took me 40 minutes of calling.
Yeah,
that's a long call session.
To
just kind of coast him. And he was close enough. He was at 40, 50 yards that, like and I have had this before in 2018, I messed up on a bull. I had my reed ripped, and that's all it took. And he just, as soon as he heard that, nope, don't like that.
Yeah.
He was out of there. And that's all it takes. So, if you're not even practiced, like, you can't do 30 minutes of cow calling and bugling and without a mess up. And that's where that experience of practicing, if you do mess up, how to kind of take that octave tone and kind of peter it out into something that might seem like it's normal to an elk.
Yeah, use it to your advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure, man. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, it's all those little things, those little tiny details, that make a difference. And exactly like you said, like messing around where your string on your bugle tube is getting caught in your release or getting caught on something else or getting caught in a branch, that can make or break your opportunity to kill a bull. Because if he's coming in hot and he's already kind of cautious and something like that happens, forget it, it's over. You know what I mean? Or like just these little like ticks and clings, like I shoot a handheld, so it dangles on a string. I make sure it's tucked inside my sleeve, but I also make sure I can get my fingers in there, pull it out quickly and grab it, because I've had the instances where it's just, I couldn't get it out. So I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to let it hang on my arm. But then sure enough, it tings, clangs, or just taps your bow, your arrow, makes a little tiny, minuscule noise, but that's all it took, right?
Yep. And that's it.
So paying attention to those little details definitely have. But then again, that comes into your preparation. That comes into, like you said, like doing all those things, drawing on your, drawing your bow back, laying down, and then sitting up. I mean, like that's a great one, right? Like, and like I can do that. I don't practice that. And there's a lot of things that I know that I need to practice and need to practice more. And like Pete and I were just talking on the last show about, like, I'm really good at ranging from like 50, 60, 70, like 50 to 70. I'm almost to the yard being able to range without a rangefinder. Anything sub 50, man, I really struggle at it. And it's funny, like the closer you get, you figure you'd be better at it, but I'm not. I'm terrible at it. I just because I don't practice those shots enough. Like, and I love shooting at 70 yards mostly because I could shoot it every day. And, I always find, and I always say that if you can make those long pokes and have consistent grouping, you're going to be, it's going to make that target seem all that much easier when you're up close. But I definitely need to, there's definitely some things I found out this year that I need to work on. So, I mean, but in the off season, that's when you work on it, right? You don't work on it a week before elk season starts or when you're in the moment. You need to start working on it like now, like take stock of what you needed to improve. And that's kind of how I look at all my hunts now, especially elk hunting. It's not the things I did right, it's the things I did wrong, so I can work on those to be more efficient come next year.
Yeah, and even just like, and that's a prime example. That's something that I tackled this year. I always am looking at tinkering, and I got a new bow this year, a new Hoyt RX-7, and when you go through that motions of setting up your rig, you have to know what you have, right? Like you got your speeds, but you need to know what your tolerance for error is. So like I'll shoot at 80, I'll step back 5 yards, hold my pin at 80 and shoot at 80. Then I'll step forward 10 paces, shoot at 80. What's that range? Like how close, how accurate do I have to be in that kill zone? Am I losing a couple inches? And the same thing with your close range shots. If I can't predict what the range is, well, I better know what pin I'm holding as my default pin.
Yeah.
Because just like you, last year I had a bull. He came in, and back then I was shooting my Hoyt Carbon Turbo. That bow is so nasty to draw that thing back, to hold it back. I can't just pull it back and hold it there forever. I have to be very strategic with my draw cycle. And so I ranged him, and he's running in as fast as he could, coming to me, running across me. I had to draw back at 15 yards.
Yeah.
And it's like, what to do in those circumstances when you're so close and I shot him at 10 feet. People, they break down, their shot process goes to hell. They stop thinking about what pin they're going to hold or where they're going to hold. And in those critical moments, you have to have some of this stuff rehearsed as an automatic.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And yeah, I mean, totally 100%. And it's funny you're talking about that old bow, and I remember those old bows, like compared to the new bows, like your RX-7, for just like the let off and the holding weight, it must just be like shooting that thing from your old one must just be like, when you pull it, even like the draw cycle must just be like, oh, what a relief. Like, just funny how much further all these new bows come. And like, yeah, man, like with those old cams or like wheels, even like trying to hold at full draw for any length of time with a bow like that, like, oh my God, like, but that's one thing I practice too, is I practice holding at full draw and I time myself, I'll go get into my shot, go through the process, and I'll just draw and I'll hold for a minute, shoot, where's my grouping at, right? Do that, hold it for 2 minutes. Where's my grouping at, right? Where do I need to improve? Is it good? Okay, it's good. Still just do a couple more, right? As July, August start to roll around, I'm definitely working on things like that. And it's just all those little things that, they're going to make or break whether you're successful or not, especially bow hunting.
Yeah. And I mean, just, going through your shot process, and I learned that in long range rifle, you have to be doing work. Every time you're shooting your bow, you're not just shooting around. Like with rifles, especially, you're wearing barrels out. My one gun, it's got 3 barrels I put on it. Like I shoot a lot. I used to. If you're not doing work with some of these magnums, you're just burning a hole right through your wallet. You have to be getting better. Every single time you have to be getting better. So that approach to archery, I'm working on my grip, I'm working on my stance, I'm working on my anchor. I'll do that for 1 week leading into, and just nailing down every single thing that to be absolutely perfect. That way, when I'm getting into season, I'm well seasoned. It's automatic. Everything is perfect. Because if you don't approach training like that, and I call it training because when I go to, like, I see other guys are shooting around, they're just shooting. What are we working on though? Like, because if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. You can't say the same, especially with bow. There's too many things that can go wrong. And I just feel like with archery, there's defining the elk, your hunt plan, your preparation. The shooting should be, well, I shouldn't say the easiest, but it should be close to. Like you should be well seasoned. It
should be the most natural.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
It should by then. I mean, and that's the thing with archery, and it's not like a rifle. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people, they can shoot wherever, and they give the excuse, oh, I don't have far enough to shoot. I can't shoot 20 yards. Okay, well, shoot 20 feet. Shoot in your garage. Just work on your draw cycle, work on your grip, work on your anchor. Close your eyes, just go let that bow pull through the shot, and just let it go, let it feel, like just get arrows in a target. That's all that it takes, right? It's just reps, consistent reps. Like you can tell when you shoot a bow enough, you can tell instantly without even looking where the arrow went down range how the shot was. Like you'll be able to feel it in your hand, sometimes. And I mean, like you brought up a really good point there about don't just shoot effectively.
Yeah.
Because going through the process of just shooting, you can get lazy, you can get complacent. And like if you shoot at 30 yards enough, you're going to have great grouping no matter what. And that it's close enough where it's forgiving enough, and especially with these new bows with the long brace height and just everything, that it's going to appear that you have, like, your grouping's good, and then you're going to think everything's good, but is it, right? Put yourself in, like you said, those situations where you're shooting at angles. And the thing is, it's a lot different when you're shooting on an animal that you've been working for 20 days and it's finally walking in and you get an opportunity to shoot, than it is just shooting at a target that's not moving. So you have to go through those sequences a lot.
Yeah, and that's public land hunting right there.
Yeah.
You could work your ass off 2 weeks solid for a 20-second opportunity.
Yeah. 100%, man. Yeah, absolutely. And we've had Kyle on, and I think Kyle, don't you?
Yeah, I met him through a mutual friend.
Yeah. And him and I were talking about the nuances between private and public land, and I mean, private land or public land hunting, and it's competitive, right? It's competitive, and if there's a bull out there, elk that are seen, they're going to be seen by other guys too. So it's always going to be, you're going to be competing, and that's when calling comes. That's why practicing your calling and learning calling sequences makes such a difference, because if you're competing against another hunter or more hunters or another group of hunters, and they're like doing the same call, like you said, just over and over and over and over, man, if you're good and effective with your calling, it's going to make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I actually encountered too where you have to, even just understanding how much pressure there is in an area, where like in my, like I think it was 2021, I called in 15 hunters.
No kidding. Yeah.
Like you got to watch how much you call even, right? Because you'll go into an area and you think you're all good to go. Okay, there's no one around in there. You start calling, and then you start hearing that response back, and then you're like, oh man, this isn't good.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just understanding too, like calling high volume. You have to know when it's time to call high volume, when it's time to kind of just be more relaxed with your calling sequences. Maybe do softer calls when you're entering into an area. Because I've had where I'm calling, and then the next day I go to work the same valley, and there's like trucks everywhere. There's like 5 trucks all in trailheads. They're listening in on it overnight, and that's that competition again, right?
Yeah.
And I had a herd bull at 50 yards that year, and it's just those uncontrollable things where you're trying to play the bull into thinking they can come in, and you have that, which is already so hard.
Yeah.
And you got hunters bombing in on you.
Yeah.
And they called, and it was a terrible call. It was just like an elephant getting their toe stubbed. It was terrible. And that bull shut up. He turned, he went right over the ridge. And I was just like, all he's got to do is step out, just walk the same trail that his cows did. And I got him. And all of a sudden I hear in the distance, and I'm like, oh no, oh no. So, there is that high volume, calling can also be kind of counterproductive too. And just talking about tactics of just getting in on elk, sometimes don't romanticize it. Like calling isn't the end all be all. There's times to call. There's times like this past year, I went out, I had a bull at 40 yards. He came in and he did something that I hadn't seen before, where he didn't walk a trail. He didn't take the easy path. He actually shot uphill to look down on me. And I know they do that. I tried getting down on his level, and there's this little cow trail that I hadn't seen, and just hunting in new areas, right? Like come into a spot, I'm like, oh, I got him. It's going to be a frontal. He's going to walk right to this point. He's going to hang up, and I'm going to smoke him. Comes in, goes up. And he got a look at me. You know, he didn't really smell me or anything. They busted, but just adapting to that. Okay, the calling, now the gig is up. They circled around. I tried to make another move on him. But just having that persistence, that's what kills bulls in some of these areas. Having that persistence. I put on 20K before I got back on those elk. I just dogged them over and over. Just watch them come up and over. And then switch to more of a mule deer type spot and stalk, where I just shut up and just started spot and stalk and just started making a play on a stalk to get into their red zone, and then and call them in from there, right? Like getting close enough where they're like, oh, this is obviously an elk.
Yeah, you know? For sure. It's funny. I've had that happen once where I was calling and I called a few guys in. That was earlier on. Now I can tell instantly what, you know, especially like guys sitting there hammering on that hoochie mama. You're like, okay, well, time to move on, like, or just wait, let them do their thing and then just move on. Yeah, like that's a really good point to bring up. And like sometimes it's not, you don't have to worry about calling. Sometimes it's good just to listen. Sometimes it's good just to walk into an area and just listen. Let the cow or let the elk do their natural thing. And then that can lead into a spot and stalk type of scenario. And that's happened to me before, where you go into an area, nothing's working. So you know what? I'm going to go in here this day and I'm just going to listen.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, right? You put enough time in there, you get around enough, you got to check your wind. You got to be, you know, you still have to be cautious of what you're doing, how much noise you're making, how much scent you're throwing around, all that stuff. But putting yourself into situations where you can just listen to cows is also, or listen to elk is also effective. And then you get a scenario like, okay, I can hear some elk activity over there. I'm going to wait a little bit, let them bed down, let things calm down, and then slowly get my wind. Once the thermals do their thing and the wind calms down, then you can move into an area where, you know, I'm just going to get in a little closer, tippy toe in there, do a lot of glassing, glass the horizon, and just look, right? You might catch an ear, you might catch a head or a butt. And it's happened to me before, right? Like I've just listened, I've walked into areas, and then unfortunately, you know, you get busted. That's one thing of walking into an area where there's a lot of cows, there's a lot of eyes on you. But sure enough, it worked, right? And if I was a little too aggressive in that scenario, if I would have just held back a little bit and waited, you know, I had good wind, maybe that bull elk would have stood up, right? But I was a little too aggressive in that scenario. But that's a good point. I mean, that it doesn't always have to be romantic, like you said. I mean, it's better to be effective than to just, you know, if it doesn't work out exactly how it looks on YouTube or how you think guys are getting it done, doesn't matter. The end goal is just to get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
So, dude, elk hunting season, it's pretty much over now, I guess. But what I want to get into is deer hunting. And I want to hear the story of, you have an amazing deer, Eastmans Elevated.
Yeah.
Great magazine, great podcast. Love everything those guys are doing over there. I want to hear the story of that monster. So we could either talk about elk hunting, or we can start off by you just going through that hunt a little bit and then dive into it from there, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, for sure. Like obviously that my year in, year out is all elk, but that's just because that's the core opportunities that are in my area.
Yeah.
Mule deer is there, like there are some general zones. It's getting harder to get access and permission. I do have access and permission on some areas in there in southern Alberta, but it is getting more pressured. So, you know, once you get one of those coveted tags, those 5-year draws, like what I did,
yeah,
your mentality has to change. And so, you know, drew a fantastic tag. The year was good for antler growth. We weren't dealing with any drought or anything like that. So I knew it was going to be a great year to draw the tag. And just the mindset that you have to change into of immediately, and I do this automatically just because the senses are different on deer hunting. The topography is different. The mindset is different. The stalking, everything is different. So, right away I went on to a couple mule deer courses online again, just get my head back into that type of mentality, because these big bucks are so sketchy. It's just, you got to make sure everything is nailed down before you even start your first stalk, because, you could see the buck of a lifetime and you're not even in the right mindset. So did some scouting. I don't normally scout, but this year I did. Went out for 2 days just to see, and I recommend people do that regardless, just to know what your zone is capable of for that year. Like if you're going out there, and I've shot lots of great deer with my father, lots of 170s, but cracking into that 180, 190, 200 plus range, and I'd set my mark at 190 to 200. That's an undertaking. There's only a couple deer like that in the zone. So right away, I'm getting out early before hunting season, before harvest too. That's really important, I think, before that human activity, just to kind of go out there and kind of see what's out there, like the inventory of bucks. Okay.
Right.
Even if it's not even in hunting permission you need to know what's out there. Like if they're out in the open, there's some no hunting areas, just glass them, see what the genetics are like. And you can't hunt those deer, but it's good to know, okay, there's like 180, 190 class bucks in this area. Go out there, get that permission early. The landowners really appreciate that. And don't negate public either. But the areas you're going to be going into, they're terrible. And that's usually edging up on private.
Yeah.
So, just getting into that. So right away I found 3-4 target bucks pushing 180, and just went through that whole like hunt plan. I took Mark's course, live from Treeline Academy. So I've already been into that game of like, I'm hunting with a purpose. I have to convince myself each day what I'm doing. And then from there you find animals and you keep going through your hunts and your stalks, and you kind of go down that rabbit hole. But so with that mule deer hunt, I was all prepped and ready to go. I had target bucks. I knew exactly where I was going to be. Opening day, I'm driving, hit a deer on the highway with my brand new truck. A doe, just bolting. Just worst case scenario, just smoked them, took out my front end. Oh man. And not ideal. Not ideal. Not ideal. But and then and I'll actually say, like, I got this deer right behind me largely because of my wife. I tell this to young guys that are getting out there and they like to hunt and stuff, like, pick a supportive partner. My wife is so supportive. Right away, she's, where are you? I'm right there. She drove in, grabbed my stuff, because like it was a pretty considerable hit. Like the door needed to be replaced and stuff. Like it was pretty extensive. And she's loaded up all my gear. We're heading back into town. I'm calling my dad. I got his diesel, and by midday, I'm hunting again. So, getting right back out there.
Yeah.
It was a terrible year for heat. So by the time I was out there, I didn't see much.
When was your draw? What time of year?
It's an all year. So it's like it's a archery combination. So it's archery in the start of the year, and then it transitions into rifle.
Yeah.
So September 1st till end of November.
Gotcha.
But so got out there, didn't see much. It was 36 degrees. So just not good, hey? And even some of the bucks that I glassed up, they were starting to already get that they're starting to bleed on their horns a little bit. So I knew I was starting to run out of time as far as patterning them. Like really early, like by the second, there was already some bucks that were getting hard horned. So didn't see anything. Switched gears. I had some reeds. I went out into the hills and hiked up in there, did some cow calling, killed a bull elk. Like 4 hours after I hiked in there. It was crazy. And that's that bull I shot at 10 yards. Packed him out. Thank goodness my cousin JP and my other friend Andrew helped me pack them out, but I was hurting. Like it was bad. It was like 6-7K in there. So beat up for about a week or two. Kind of, yeah. And put my mule deer hunting on hiatus for a little bit, recovered, went back out there, and right away, right back to my hunt plan, started finding bucks, big bucks too. Like putting stalks on, 180-inch buck that I ended up passing at 30 yards. Finding and locating those big bucks, they pattern, and you have to understand the mentality. The early season, they start going through these changes, and they're pretty dramatic. Obviously, their mentality is they're out in the open. They're walking to and from on ridge lines usually because they know they got the wind advantage. They'll bed up, and then they'll kind of bump, and as the day progresses, they're back in the timber. And then they come back out at night. So just, going through stalks, understanding, and this is something that I would say hunt deer or hunt your main target before you get to one of these draws, so that you know kind of what to do, so that you're not pushing the limits, hunting to failure, blowing deer up, knowing and identifying what is a high percentage stalk. You come in there, and I was doing 3 stalks a day, and you come into the red zone, and just understanding, is this deer even killable? Like where they are, a lot of the time they'll bed in kind of like a little bend in a hill, and they know from ridge to ridge there's 100 yards. Well, they know that they're safe. Or they'll bed closer to the top of a hill that has wind advantage, so that they know they could smell that and they can peer into the valley across from them. So just, understanding their mentality and understanding when you shouldn't even try, that's pretty hard. I had one deer, he was pushing 200 inches, and just knowing you're so close, but you might as well be on the moon. You're 107 yards, and it's just you can't go any further. Just knowing when it's not going to happen.
That is such a frustrating. That is one of the. So when I switched over to hunting with my bow only, that was the hardest pill I had to swallow. Was knowing that I am so close, but like you said, I might as well be on the fucking moon. Because it's just not going to happen. And it always goes into your head too, like Wayne Gretzky said, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So at the beginning, I was always really aggressive, but then you get into situations, if you're targeting a specific animal and you do that and you're too aggressive, you're never going to see that deer or elk or whatever it is you're chasing again. He's going to be gone. So definitely putting yourself into those situations is definitely, it's frustrating as all hell. Cause you just know, like you said, I'm 170 yards away. I'm so close. With a rifle, it'd be over. But with a bow, it's just not going to happen. You just got to sit there and watch and take it. It's terrible.
And that's exactly what happened. Those deer are so switched on. And just going through extreme measures, I backed out. As soon as I seen them, I backed out. And that's where we talk about, your preseason checklist of, okay, am I physically fit enough? Because if you're not, you are not going to go the right way. There's only one way, and that's the right way. And that's to back completely out, go into cover, get the wind right. Because if you can't physically do that, they'll wind you. They're there for a reason. They know that the wind is going to come up to them. So backed out, went in the right way, and I belly crawled for 300-400 yards. Terrible. Like going so slow, I was questioning whether or not I was going to make it before last light.
And that is extremely challenging. I remember I was hunting, not sorry to keep cutting your story off here, but like hunting antelope in southern Alberta, man, and like belly crawling, and like here in BC, you never have to belly crawl, right? Like we're hunting in completely different topography, but like that is physically exhausting. And then you start getting physically exhausted, it starts to wear on you mentally. You're like, oh man, I just can't do it. I'm gonna have to do this now or never, because I'm not gonna be able to make it. And that comes down to, like, if you're physically conditioned, mentally, it'll help you to make those decisions, which are, ultimately could be the right decision. But yeah, belly crawling is one thing I never thought of how physically challenging it could be to do that, do it slow, do it quietly. It's exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're sitting there planking for
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's frustrating too, because you can go down a route on a stalk, and it's just like, oh man, I'm now into thorns, and I got to just kind of work my way through that, and not make noise, and not push the limits, and waiting for those gusts of wind and move between those gusts. Like that takes a lot of mental toughness, because too, like, you drop your pack, you're out of water now. It's hot out, like it was 30 plus degrees, so you're just getting roasted out there. So needless to say, I got to 107 yards, and just me being there, that buck felt that pressure.
Yeah.
He felt that pressure, and I wasn't loud. I had the wind, and I was just kind of hanging out, waiting to see what would happen. And he got up right away. He was in a complete dead sleep. I'd even question him, like, do I take my boots off and just start working my way in? And just me being there, he could just sense, he heard something.
Yeah. Sense your presence.
Yeah. And he stood up, walked off. And then right from there, I put another stalk on him just to put him to bed to see where he was. Him just feeling that pressure. Boom. Didn't see him in daylight again. That was it. Didn't see him in daylight. And I tried finding him. I even talked to Brian from Eastmans, like, what do you do in this scenario? It's like a big miss. What do you do? How do you recover from some of these things where you push them hard, they start going in and out of timber? Like, what's the tactic? So I started, I talked to him. He said, they could be held up in 100-yard little pocket somewhere. So I started going in to all the timber areas, just walking silently, almost like ambush hunting, just really slow, glass to close, glass to far, work my way through areas. Never did see him again. So switched gears, said, okay, that deer, he's off the table. But when you see a 200-inch deer, you're like, okay, like, I'm setting the bar high. I'm not shooting even a 180. I'm going to go for that, push for that upper limit, that 190, 200, definitely possible in the zone. So started making stalks on animals, and just talking about, I come from a technical background in my work life, and it's all like, it's power generation and power utilities. There are rules. So I'm very used to that kind of structure, and they're usually inconvenient, but they're there for a reason. They're there to serve a purpose. And with mule deer, there are some rules. In the morning, that's when you're finding and locating your animals. You have to be up there early. You have to be at a point where you can see everything. And you have to be able to get in there without them seeing that movement, seeing you up there. So slipping in there quiet, glassing up the bucks. And from there, you have to shadow them. And you have to shadow them to the point where you see them bedded, and you just have to stay there. Kind of far, but kind of close. Just sit there and watch them. And you watch them until the sun comes over the horizon. They're bedded in shade, and that shade changes. They get up and they walk. You have to watch them to hit their second bed before you even consider a stalk.
Yeah, 100%.
And just if you don't do that, you'll get there and you're like, "Where's the deer? Yeah. He's gone."
Yeah, and you turn around, he's bouncing over the ridge. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I learned that. Right away when I got into bow hunting and got out of hunting those high alpine bucks with the rifle. You get into like the mid valley or the bottom bucks, is that, yeah, you have to let them do their thing and let it naturally take its course. And then sure as shit, like you said, they're going to bed down and they're going to get up again, and they're going to move down again to someplace a little thicker where they're going to have longer shade. And they know that. And then you have to expect it and wait for it. And sometimes it takes a little longer, right? Sometimes they have shade for an hour. Sometimes it's even 2, but they're going to get up again, because it's sure enough, that sun is going to move around to a place where they're not comfortable. Like, I mean, like you said, it's hot. I wouldn't want to sit in the sun baking all day either. So they're going to do the same thing, right? They're going to get up and move. You just got to be patient, and it's mentally challenging. Like, do I go? Do I go? Like, you got to be cautious of all these things that could go wrong, is like wind. And like, I've made stalks before, and like, you know, you're going through an area and you didn't pay close enough attention to that doe that had bedded down in an area where she's going to see you when you're walking in to get to a position where you think you could kill that buck, either in his bed or when he stands up. So that's why you got to be completely cognizant of like everything that's going around when you're glassing those, and take inventory on like how many deer do you see in the field, where are they going, like not just paying attention to the big buck you see that you want to go after. You have to you got to know, you know, it's kind of like a poker game. You got to make sure, you know, you got to keep inventory of who's doing what and when they're doing it.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you say that, because that's actually what kept happening to me. Was there was whitetail does in the area, and my goodness, I ended up having to spot deer, let them bed up, wait until the thermals are changing. I have that strong wind. I can make a game plan. I recommend this to anybody who's hunting, especially where there's landmarks. Take a picture, range it, take a picture, put a waypoint in your iHunter or whatever app you're using, Gaia or Google,
OnX.
whatever, OnX. Put a waypoint on it, even if it's ballpark where you think they are. Because if you don't do that, once you get up in there, and if you have to, like I had to go completely around this little valley because there was whitetail held up in there, and they kept blowing up and blowing and taking off running. And by the time you get up and all the way around and start planning a stalk on a deer, things start looking similar. You start looking around like, that looks like where he was. You get there, well, is it 100%? I don't know. My perspective has changed, and that's when you start getting the urge to peek, and that's where everybody gets they get blown. They right away they get picked off because they're peeking up, and that's one thing I'm always constant of that. I'm always thinking about that, like when I'm trying to do my final approach on a deer. And I'm looking, and that was helpful with all these stalks that I was doing. When people talk about passing deer, I was passing deer at 30 yards. Like, actually, because they're borderline, and when they're borderline like that, they're around that 180 mark. I really want to get close eyes on them so I can see like what's going on their bases, what's going on. Is there any extras I'm not seeing from a distance? Like, is there something else going on with that deer that could boost up the score? And it's just personal achievement trying to get to a certain level of deer. But when you're doing that, you have this urge to peek, and you cannot peek. You just have to sit there as low as possible and just scan the horizon, move up low, scan the horizon, just looking for those horn tips, and being super cautious of that, and just working your way in on the final approach. And that's where guys, like, if they don't have a landmark, they didn't wait till they got the wind. And sometimes, like, I had on one buck, he was borderline. He was a good buck. He was probably pushing that high 180s, where I ended up having to back out. I'm 50 yards and the wind starts switching and swirling, and I had to back all the way out, go completely around, and then start over. And the deer got up and he started moving, right?
Yeah. Just
naturally, didn't blow him out of there, but definitely that's part of it, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. 100%. Yeah. And that's when that mentally, like, it gets mentally challenging, and especially doing that day in, day out. And then, like, it comes down to your preparation 365 days a year, whether it's elk hunting, deer hunting, whatever you're doing. You gotta know that you're going to be in that situation. To kill world-class animals, you're going to have to go through a lot of shit that you don't want to go through.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and this is something that I should have probably started said at the very start, was if you don't have a good understanding of field judging mule deer, I'm not saying you're going to be disappointed, because they're an amazing creature. For any quasi mature animal is a big trophy, especially with archery. But if you're going to go for those 180 plus 190, 200 inch deer, you have to set your expectations at the very start of the hunt. I am not going to shoot a 180 or a 170 or whatever your benchmark is. I will not do that. So in order for me to achieve my success, I have to have a very clear understanding of what that class of deer looks like. What features am I looking for? Because that hesitation is what's going to be damning to you later on in the hunt, because you might hum and haw and then you pass up a 190 buck. Well, 190s are they're cartoonish. You like, yeah, I need to shoot that deer right now.
Yeah.
But there's a borderline, right, where they maybe have a smaller frame, but they have extras. That can be extremely difficult if you're talking about trying to get into that 180, high 180, 190 class. So, right away, I Eastmans has a great YouTube video on there, and I recommend anybody go on that. And
nice. I'll throw some show notes up for the listeners. I mean, we're just plugging the hell out of Eastmans here.
Oh, I know. But it's just, I went through their mule deer course, and then I found online just some great material of video of different classes of deer, of bracketing deer. I've always, and pushing Eastman's aside on this, but just measuring bucks. You got if you got a bunch of hunting buddies, measure them. Be there when they, at the end of the year, a couple of my buddies will bring all the animals that they got, and just understand what that actually looks like in person. Like, okay, this is a 190 buck, or this is a 170.
100%, dude. And because like nowadays everybody goes on Instagram and they're reading like, oh, that's a 180 buck, that's a 190 buck, and like when you're looking at these deer, like not everybody does it, but a lot of people, they stand 8 feet back from the fucking deer, so the deer looks like an elephant next to the person, and it's hard to really judge. Like, it drives me nuts when like I prefer guys not to do that. Like, just be honest with, like, no matter what, man, that's a good deer. Like a 180 deer is a beautiful deer, especially a mule deer with a bow, with with anything, or an elk, whatever. Like, just like that part of it drives me a little berserker. And then but just looking at and trying to just get used to field judging that way isn't going to work. You have to see them in person. You got to actually get your hands on them, put a tape on them, and just figure out exactly where. Because like when a mule deer stands up, or you see a mule deer's rack looking at you, or it's in the horizon, like it's got a little bit of light behind it, they all look freaking big, man. It could be a 140 and it could have a good frame, good structure. It could be a 3x3, and it's they just look big. So definitely got to do your homework there.
Yeah, you got to do your homework, and you got to understand. Again, there's rules. I would say, like, you have to understand in your area, do they have big heads? Do they have big ears? If they have big ears, you're looking for at least 2 on the main beam. As far as your ear length, take that ear length. You have to have at least 2 on the main. A 180 buck is going to be outside the ears on horn width, and they can have good fronts or good backs. They can have deficiencies, but once you get into that 190, there can be no deficiencies. There has to be good fronts, good backs, width, mass, everything needs to be there. But when you get into extras and stuff, it gets a little bit tricky, but still, if you're going for a buck, if it's good fronts or good backs, you always pick good fronts. It's 60% of the score is fronts. You have to hit those benchmarks to get those bigger bucks. So, just understanding that, because my cousin, he had shot a buck, and he was a Goliath. He was humongous. Just the body on him, he was built like a rhino. And, he walked up to him. He thought it was like a 190, 200-inch buck. But he's still an outstanding buck. He was 180. But right there, it's like, I kind of clued in. I'm like, that's hard, especially when they're standing out on their own. You really have to have that dial going into a hunt. Right. So, just having that benchmark and all these, there's all these rules and, we're score counting. But just making sure that you have already set in your head where your benchmark is, so you can reject all these other deer. And that's, that's something that I was doing on this hunt, and it was getting frustrating, honestly, because some of these deer would have been some of the biggest deer I'd ever shot in my life. Like 180 inch deer. I passed him, had him at 40 yards. He had deep forks. He just was kind of skinny horned. And I was going for that monarch, that wide, big frame, stereotypical, either a big typical or a big frame non-typical. And I just went through stock after stock after stock, and I just started seeing less and less and less. So fast forward a couple weeks after that, I waited till the first snowfall, and we got absolutely pounded by snow. It was up to like knee, waist height. I went out a couple times, wasn't seeing very much. So again, I do this, and I can appreciate guys will take big blocks to hunt, and that's how you have to do it for work. But if you have the flexibility to stop, if there's no activity, there's no activity. You kind of got to be able to hit pause, wait till something changes, whether that's weather or seasonal rut changes. Something needs to change before there's going to be a new inventory of deer coming in. So I waited. We got a little bit of snowfall again. Another cold front had came in, and loaded up the boys, and we were going to head in to actually hunt elk for Cohen, my oldest. And but I had in the back of my mind, I knew there's some big crankers in this area, and we started just working our way through. And hunting with kids is difficult.
Oh yeah,
it's tough, especially for like Boone or Crockett level deer. You really have to emphasize, like, you have to be quiet. You can't be stomping around.
Oh, dude, I couldn't even imagine. It's so funny you say that. Like, I mean, my son Wyatt has gotten so much better, but like it just, everything is like, you have to stop. And like every 5 minutes you're like, hey, don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Do this. Do this. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like, yeah, totally. It's so funny you say that.
And, and by the time we got into the spot where I ended up killing this buck, we had already gone to like 2-3 different spots, and having those spots. And each time I was trying to really emphasize one thing we have to focus on. It's like, okay, wind, like telling them about wind, telling them about, okay, no fast movements. That's one thing that I think gets a lot of guys pegged, is they're swinging their arms and they're walking, they're looking around fast. It's like, you can't be doing that. You just move slow, silent, move
methodical.
Up, glass, move up, glass. So we were doing that. And, they got a lesson really quickly on passing deer, because there was a 170 blew past us. And my youngest Mace, he was like, well, that's a good deer, Dad. Like, why are we not shooting that deer? I'm like, he's not good enough. It's just, trust me. This is the right decision. You're not going to shoot big deer if you keep shooting 170s, and most deer, they top out at 170. So let's just keep looking.
Yeah.
And then another one goes by, and he's like, oh man, like, he's just chomping at the bit. He's like, well, let's, like, my oldest Cohen is just like, so are we killing a deer today? Or like, no, like, we're going to keep looking. Trust me. We're going to keep looking. We're going to find something. And then we ended up backing out of that area and going into some real gnarly stuff again. And, advice with kids and hunting, and this is probably even with spouses too, is, and a lot of guys aren't going to like me saying this, but they have to have comparable gear to what you're using. They really do. Like with kids, it's tricky because they're constantly outgrowing their gear and stuff like that. But making sure that they have good boots, they got a good thermal layer, some level of protection really helps to get into some of these real nasty spots.
100%, dude. If you're taking your kids out and they're wet and they're cold and they're miserable and they're not having any fun, your hunt is fucking over. It's over.
Oh yeah.
Pack up, go home.
It's over, and the complaining starts.
Yeah.
And they're going to have a terrible time.
Yeah.
So luckily, I got them all geared up, and we're heading up this hill, and we're just slowly, methodically moving through the timber, move up, glass, move up, glass, move up, glass. There was an area where I knew that there could be potentially some big bucks. So we went the long way completely around. It was pretty steep, went all the way up. It was about 1,000-yard detour. So it was pretty rough terrain, but we went up into that area and we just set up, we just started glassing. And, tactics with glassing, you gotta, like, if you're gonna be really serious about it, you have to have some tripod, something to get really steady so you can start gridding out all the terrain. And honestly, like with my kids, I showed them pictures of mule deer. features of mule deer before we headed out for the day. So like, hey, if you're glassing, you're going to actually help out and be an asset to the hunt here. You got to know what you're looking for. These are the features you're looking for. Don't just look for a big deer, look for a tine, look for a hoof, look for, their butt sticking out, look for that color hue or color tone. And we're glassing, and it's blowing at this point. We're high up. It's terrible. It's super cold. And then all we see is just this little flicker of this movement. I'm like, oh, that's either a really big deer or that's elk. So we're going to back out. We're going to use some archery techniques because like by this time it was a rifle hunt. And that's one thing I'll say, like, if you're a good and proficient archery hunter, when you get a rifle in your hand, it's like a superpower. You're like, man. I gotcha. Like I have the power. I can come down there and I can make something happen. But we spotted some movement into this one bench that I knew there was either elk or deer and they love that area. And just did a pep talk with my kids. Okay, no talking whatsoever. Have to follow exactly behind me, single file, no waving your arms, nothing, because we had to clear this big wide opening in it was snow, wide open terrain. Like if we head straight at them, they'll notice less movement. So let's just slowly walk single file right behind me, no talking, no big movements, and let's just go really slow. And we just started heading down into them, straight at them. Kept going. We kind of stopped 1 second because I kind of glassed. I seen a little bit of flicker of some movement and headed right in at them. And by this point, we're just on the edge of this timber line. And right away, I'm like, okay, there's some deer in here. Look on the edge. I seen some juvenile deer in the back. And then I started to I kind of felt like I'd seen some movement. Like I think we kind of partially busted them, but their curiosity got the best of them. And he got up. And he's sitting there and I glassed him and we're at about 100 yards. And right away, and this is where coming back to the field judging, immediately knew that this deer was like a 190 class. He's looking straight at me at 100 yards. He couldn't quite see me because the way we approached, we ensured that we had a backdrop of some sort of vegetation.
So you weren't silhouetting yourself. Yeah. Which is
so he seen something, but he didn't know quite what he was looking at. And right away, I knew he was a shooter. Fronts level with the backs, deep forks, good fronts, good backs. Outside the ears, shooter buck all day. So did my final approach. I told the kids, I'm like, just sit down. I'll start heading in. There's a big tree. Put the tree in between this deer and I. I'm gonna go in for a closer look at him. I was tempted to pass him. I'm good. I'm glad that I didn't. But close the distance to under 50 yards and then just peeked around the corner, seen that. I'm like, oh yeah, great buck. So I know there was a split second where I was thinking, I'm like, do I crawl in and shoot him prone or do I shoot him just straight standing? Because I just was worried that as soon as I came around this tree, he was going to bolt. Hey. But I figured, I'm like, if I shoot prone, they're used to things crawling to come kill them. So I probably shouldn't do that. You might not like that. So braced my gun up on this tree and all I did was I just went counterclockwise all the way just as slow as I possibly could until I could see him and just smoked him. And I really, until you get hands on them, you don't know exactly what you're looking at, but just an outstanding deer.
Man, amazing.
185 on the frame. So just outstanding. And then, he had a couple of brow tines and extras, put him in at 190 and 3/8. So just outstanding deer. He's actually right there behind me, right there.
Yeah. What a beauty.
From Lance at Ultimate did that. Just an incredible hunt. I mean, and to do it with your kids too is extremely challenging.
I didn't realize that you had done it with your kids. What a special moment for all you guys.
Oh yeah, and just packing it out. We caped them together. My wife bought the boys some new Benchmade knives, so they got to use their knives for the first time on this deer, and just I knew what was at stake here with this level of deer. I knew I'm like, this is like core memory stuff here. So, you know, I was going to kill that buck regardless because he was good enough and I had the kids with me. But to get that level of deer with the kids and, you know, I'll never forget, we just pull his antlers out and you're like, whoa, you know, just that, you know, kids see that and you see that in their eyes with a big fish or like a big deer or a big bull elk, and they've never really been around something of that size. And,
just the experience for them, like they're never going to forget it. And like, so I took Wyatt out elk hunting this year. It was his first year elk hunting. And like, we got to an area and I knew there was a couple bulls in there. Right away, I go in there, start making some calls, and I get this bull bugle at me, but it's faint. I'm like, did you hear that? He's like, no, I didn't hear it. I'm like, okay, let's get close. I wanted to get real close. So it's a definitive, like, oh yeah, that's a bugle. So we get right up in close and I get him going. And like, I turn around and the look on his face was just like, he had just seen a dinosaur. Like, it was just like his eyeballs were as big as you can imagine. And like, you know, we had close encounters. We were trying to get him an elk. We had one at 80 and he just couldn't find it in his rifle scope. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But man, you know, like he said, he wasn't able to connect with one, but still to this day. And I mean, we've had a lot of firsts for him in the last couple of years. You know, last year he got his first mule deer, got his first bear. This year he got his first whitetail. But still to this day, he says the most fun experience he's ever had hunting was that day when he got to listen to elk and see the elk for the first time.
Yeah. It is. And honestly, like once you become an experienced hunter, it kind of reinvigorates you too, right?
Oh, dude,
like
totally.
You know,
totally.
Like it gets that kind of that spark of excitement is still there. It doesn't ever go, but when you start getting into it with your kids, it's
well, it's funny you say that. Like, and I said it on the show before. Like, when I go out and I'm hunting for myself, I don't get like I get excited, but I don't get that, you know, that first buck, that first elk, that first sheep, first goat feeling you get after you've killed a few animals, because eventually it just fades away, unfortunately. But like with Wyatt, taking him out, I got all those first time emotions again. Like you get like, man, I'd get more excited than him when he had an opportunity in a deer, and I'd be like, my heart was pounding, and like you just want it to happen so bad, right? And you know, it's funny you say that, because that couldn't be truer.
Yeah, and like I mean, the boys, they've been around elk hunting their whole life. So I actually shot my first bull elk. I had the kids with me with my bow. Cohen would have been 11 years old, and Mace would have been 7. So they had that crazy. Yeah, I shot him at 30 yards. He bull runs right past them with the Luminox buried in them. It was crazy. So you know, to get back, they're like, well, they even had said after this hunt, we had experienced the entire highs and lows. You know, the high of the excitement, we're seeing deer, but then, oh, you didn't shoot them, you know, and okay, we're going to a new spot, and then we didn't see anything, and then go to another spot. So, you know, that kind of got that full experience, and then the big payoff. And then, to be honest, the hard work after, right? Because they packed out that mule deer with me. And that was like, as a father, what a cool experience. Shoot a Boone and Crockett level deer, packing them out in the dark. We quartered them up. The boys, they each had a quarter. And we hiked out of there, and you know, what an adventure, you know, just everything that you're looking for in a hunt.
Yeah, no doubt. What an experience. One that you guys will never forget. And yeah, it's good that you get them used to those ebbs and flows of hunting young. So when they get older, they do, you know, they just don't think. It's funny, like my dad, he hunted in the prime time of moose hunting, right? Like they'd go up, they'd ball punch their tags in a day or two. And like he doesn't like how difficult it's become now, right? Like, I mean, they would literally just drive down one forestry service road, hit 1 or 2 cut blocks, shoot a moose, bring it back. Now you have to do a little work, right? He's got spoiled his whole life, and like he's just like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to go out. I'll just take the kids out and go grouse hunting, right? He's just like, it's too much of a grind for him. But well, man, you know, we're kind of over an hour here, and I'd like to keep these things around an hour. But dude, great to have you on the show, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
we'll have to get you on again here, and I'd love to hear about your kids' elk and just maybe off-season training and shooting and stuff. So
yeah, for sure.
Maybe in the early new year here we can reconnect.
Perfect. Sounds good, Kevin.
So where can the people listening find and follow you and all that jazz?
Mostly on Instagram, Derek K. Corey. And that's pretty much the only thing I'm doing these days. I'm not on Facebook that much anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll put links up to all that, and I'll also put links up to the Eastmans e-scouting thing you took. And,
yeah, for sure.
And Mark, you mentioned Mark Livesay, you took this course.
Mark Livesay, complete game changer. Like just having a plan set out, then you have to, prove every plan, why you're going there, how much time you're going to spend, critical to success.
For sure. I'll put links up to his stuff. He's actually on his link. There's a link to his stuff on our webpage, but I'll put another link up for him. And dude, thanks again. It's been a lot of fun, and it's good to we've been chatting back and forth on Instagram for a while now. So
yeah,
it's great to finally connect.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, man. Good luck with the rest of the season.
You too.
Okay. Cheers.
A life that has the stories to back it. A life to be proud of. It's a Winchester life.
Yeah, baby. 6'8" Western. Oh, Mule Deer, baby, right there.
Tune in every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV.
Gear up for the hunt and learn from the best with Deer and Deer Hunting Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV. Tune in every week for expert hunting tips and unforgettable moments in the field. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment.